Now this is the video for you if you want to learn how to make an Easter wreath for your front door. Well, good afternoon and welcome back to another tutorial. So this is probably one of the most asked for designs, and I'm going to do an Easter wreath with some fresh flowers. You can either hang it on your front door if you're in an area that's quite sheltered, or you can hang it inside, or you could even put it flat on the table. It's going to have a slight Easter theme to it because I've got lots of Easter eggs that we can insert into the frame. But other than that, I'm using spring flowers that you'll easily be able to get hold of this time of the year. The base that I'm using is a 12-inch foam ring with a hard plastic base, and this is my preferred base of choice. But I will look at doing another wreath which uses more sustainable options to create the design, and something that could go straight onto the compost heap. So the floral foam base needs to be pre-soaked, so when you buy it, it's dry and it's very lightweight. Fill up a large bucket or the sink with water. Allow the foam ring to sit on top of the water and it'll soak under its own weight. Don't force it under and don't pour water over the top. It is going to be quite heavy when you've finished, and it might be a good idea to prepare it the day before you want to put flowers into it. Otherwise, you will have quite a lot of water leaking out from the frame. Now I'm going to start by creating the outline of my arrangement, and I'm probably going to go about an inch or two around the outside edge. And I'm using a florist-based foliage here. This is called leatherleaf, but you can use anything that you can get hold of at home. So it could be some ivy, you could have hebe in the garden, it could be just conifer, but anything that's evergreen and that's quite strong and fairly robust. I've done this to speed up the process, but if you do this yourself before you start the design, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a circular outline when you've finished. So what I've done with the leatherleaf, and this is this fern-like material, I've cut it to a fairly similar length. I've cut lots of pieces here in front of me to a similar length. Then I know that the outline shape to my arrangement is going to be fairly circular. If you sort of lay every piece down on top of one another and cut it, then hopefully when you get to the end, your design will be almost round. Now I wouldn't worry too much at this stage if it's not perfectly circular. It is quite an informal, rustic design, so it won't look out of place if it's not perfectly matching on either side. Now what I've done is I've gone round the outside of my ring first, and I've placed them as low down on the frame as I possibly can. So where the oasis meets the plastic base, that was my first placement. I've started to go around the middle as well, just to show you the process, and we'll come back in a minute when I've got more greenery in place. So now you'll see that I've gone all the way around the outside and in the centre, and what you don't want to do is overfill the centre section here. It's a circular design, it's a never-ending circle, so we don't want to make it look like a circle or a ball, so keep that gap there in the centre. I've also used some decorative ribbon to create a loop at the back so you can hang it to your front door. And you can either buy those suction cups, or you can buy the metal attachment that goes over the front of your door. If you're lucky enough to have a wooden door, you might have a hook. You could even have a door knocker that you could tie the design from. So that gives us the basic outline shape. Hopefully it looks fairly circular from the camera. And you can mix the greenery if you prefer. I just happen to use one type. And what I'm going to do next is to add in my Easter eggs. Now sometimes I do this at the end, but I've got quite a few. So I'm thinking that if I put them in now, it's going to give me a more evenly balanced distribution of the colour and texture of the egg. If you don't have anything like this, you can start with your biggest flower first, place your biggest flowers in, and then work to your smaller flowers or your filler flowers as you go. So I've just prepared my little eggs by placing a wire there on the top. If I just hold my hand there over the back, you'll be able to see. And I didn't want to remove the little hook loop because I might want to use these at a later date. So what I've done is I've attached a wire on. I'm going to bend the wire so that I get a bit of a hook there on the top. and then I know once it's in the foam, it's not going to pull back out again. And I'm going to look just to fairly evenly balance them throughout the arrangement. I don't want it to be perfectly balanced because the design is fairly natural, it's quite informal. If they're arranged too symmetrically and too equally balanced, then they're probably not going to create that natural, very country look that I'm trying to achieve. Now at the moment, all the eggs are naturally going to drop down. If I just turn that round for you to see, they're naturally going to drop down because they're hanging from the wire. But as I add in the different flowers and some more greenery, it'll prop them up more effectively, and they won't look quite so strange just hanging there from the frame. So we're going to go all the way around. If you're somebody that likes symmetry and you like to have equal balance on both sides, then you might want to spend a bit more time spreading out the colours of the little eggs. But I'm just going to go with a very random, sort of messy appearance, and I'm not going to overthink the placement of the eggs. That's the egg distribution at the moment, and I know that at the moment it probably looks a bit untidy because they're just dangling there from the foam. But as we insert the flowers, it's going to improve its overall look. Now I have 3 hyacinths, and it's quite a big flower, it's quite a strong colour. So I'm going to start by placing this in, again not perfectly matching, but I'm going to try and distribute the colour, the darker colour blue throughout the design. A lot of you will like symmetry and you'd like to have them in matching pairs, but I've got 3, so I'm going to look to evenly spread out that colour. And the hyacinth is quite a soft stem flower, so I'm going to use a wire internally in the stem so that it gives me a bit of extra support. It's going to be quite a heavy flower and it might need a bit of supporting with some greenery as I work my way through the arrangement. Another hyacinth there, a wire inserted into the base, and if you don't have florist wire like I do, then you can use a cocktail stick or a thin stem of a flower just to give a bit of extra support. Now this hyacinth here is much smaller and much more delicate. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the stem of my iris just to poke a hole into my floral foam, and that means I won't damage the stem so much. Now the top one might look a bit heavy at the moment because it's a much bigger size hyacinth, but by the time I've added all my colours and textures of flowers in, hopefully that's going to blend in much more effectively. Now I have made myself a really lovely bow in all the different colours of the flowers that are going in. So we've got some blue, green and yellow. I'm going to hook the wire around at the back so that it doesn't fall out of my foam, and I'm going to pop that just on top of the centre ribbon so that I'm hiding that centre strip and I'm giving a real softness to my little wreath. I think that's really quite beautiful. Now I'm going to use my irises. I'm going to cut them all at the same time so that when I place them into my wreath, I can do it much faster and much more efficiently. I don't have to stop each time to pick up my scissors and cut another flower, put it down and cut another flower. You work far more productively and faster in this sort of style and method. So what I've done with the irises there is I've gone around the outside, and if you haven't got iris like me, that could be a spray carnation, it could be a chrysanthemum. Tulips and daffodils don't tend to work quite so well in this arrangement if you're a beginner because they're hard to get into the foam. But if you're a more proficient flower arranger, then you can use that same technique and insert a cocktail stick or a wire in the base. All right, so now I've got 3 more of the iris, and as I add more flowers, those lovely eggs now tend to look more like an integral part of the design than something that's been put in as an afterthought. Now I'm going to go with some daffodils, and if it's your first time with daffodils, just take your time and work a bit slower and don't force them into the foam. I'm cutting them short again so I can work with one flower and one tool at a time, and I can work my way round adding in this flower so we get that variety in shape and texture, colour and forms, and that's really quite lovely so far. Now, one of the more delicate flowers that I've got is the scented narcissi, and this variety is paper white. It has quite a pungent smell to it. I think you either love it or you hate it, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Cut them to a size that I know is manageable and that will fit quite comfortably into my wreath, and then I'm going to start evenly distributing that white colour. If they're a bit long, just give it a little trim, work gently and slowly to get them into the foam, and if need be, use that cocktail stick or a kebab stick to give you a bit of extra support there on the stem. But I do love this very informal look and this more natural style. Now, I do have a couple of tulips. I've got 3 or 4 here, and the only downside of using tulips is that the tulip continues to grow after it's been cut from the plant. So in the next couple of days, these will probably go a little bit longer, and you will lose that tight shape that you've created when you're putting the flowers in. So you might have to remove the tulips, cut them and pop them back in again. But they do really go with that lovely Easter feel. Now, my eggs are slightly starting to get a bit lost in amongst all the flowers, but that's okay because they're on wires. When I've added all my flowers in, I'm going to slightly pull them out so that they're supported by the flowers around them. You could put the eggs in at the end if you wanted to, but I prefer putting them in at the beginning because it's quite a big solid shape. Now, the creme de la creme of flowers this afternoon is the amazing ranunculus, and you possibly have seen me use these already because I've been using them a lot over the last couple of weeks. This variety is Merlino, and it's got a really beautiful texture to it. It's like multi-layered, almost like those garden roses that are very popular at the moment. And I've done the same thing, cut them all so that they're a similar length, and then work your way round, just giving a bit of an even distribution with the colour. I'm not worried about covering those eggs because we'll pull those up towards the end. Just want to make sure that the colour is fairly evenly distributed. You might be lucky enough this time of the year to have some of the ranunculus in your garden because it's a seasonal flower, and its proper season is the spring. So how are we doing so far? Now I'm going to put in a few small pieces of the catkin, these little willow buds, which are really going to give that springtime feel to the arrangement. And one of the good things about wreaths like this is that you don't need to have long flowers. So if you've created a design before and you've got lots of flowers left over that need using up, then you can cut them small and place them in a design like this. You can use all of the same colour and flower, or you can do what I've done and mix them together. Now, my absolute favourite flower for this week, I think it even outsells the ranunculus, but it's going to be these cream tulips, and they're a double head. You wait a couple of days until that colour explodes, and the size of that tulip will almost double. And this is going to be my last flower, and then I'm going to fill in with some greenery. So I'm going to do that same method, cut the flowers to the size that I want to use them, and then I'm going to look at evenly distributing them. It's such a lovely colour. It's almost like vanilla ice cream. And I wouldn't normally work on a wreath ring hanging up in this sort of position here. This is just so that it's easier for you to see on screen. It's much better when it's flat on the table in front of you. So just one more tulip. Step back a little bit and see if I've lost the shape at all. I think this iris here on this side is a bit long, so we'll cut him a bit shorter and get him back in on the side there. And now all I need to do really is fill in with some foliage, make sure the gaps are all hidden, and pull out those Easter eggs slightly so you can see them more clearly. So as we come to the end of adding the foliage into the design, hopefully now you can see that the eggs are a bit more prominent in the arrangement, and they've been propped up by the greenery to force the egg forward rather than it laying down. The second foliage that I added in was some asparagus fern, which gave it a more lighter springtime feel to it. And before I finish it, I'm going to add in some Vaccinium, which is the wild blueberry, and this time of the year I do tend to use it quite a lot. And the Vaccinium is the wild blueberry, so the foliage on it looks very much like this. During the summer months it would hold the little blue fruits on it, but from about November through to March we use it a lot in this form, which gives you this very sort of natural appearance to it. I love it used in all types of floral design, and it looks beautiful in Christmas wreaths. Sometimes you'll find it in florist shops dyed and sprayed different colours, and I've cut it all to a similar size just so that it makes the insertion of it into the foam much easier. Now if you've over soaked your floral foam, what you will find is that you will get a lot of water run out from the bottom, and the foam frame here that's at the back isn't really designed to be hung from a front door. So if you're going to hang this at the main entrance to your house and the door is opening and closing on a regular basis, then you will find several of the flowers or foliage will start to fall out, and that's because it's just not made to be hung on its side like it is here. If you don't want to hang it on your front door and you'd like to bring it inside the house, you could sit it quite nicely on the center of your table, but make sure you've got a placemat underneath it so that you don't get any water damage. And that is my design finished for today. So a gorgeous, bright and cheerful springtime wreath that you could use with or without the eggs. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so that you know every time I upload a new tutorial. Don't forget, if you've got any questions, please pop them in the comment box below. I will link the products in the description box below, so if you decide you want to buy a frame like this, you can purchase one from Amazon. And thanks as ever for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Goodbye for now.